Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 5th season, we are looking at Joe Johnston's 2011 film, Captain America, the First Avenger. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Real Film Podcast.
And I'm Pete Wright. Dum Dum gets drunk.
Today we're talking about Minute 74, which begins with Rogers talking about Hydra moving parts to an unknown facility, and ends with Dum Dum saying he'll fight with Steve if he opens a tab for them. Back on the show, it's Jonathan and Tabitha Carlisle. Hello again.
Hey.
Hey. Just letting you know that we're in. We're in for the rest of the day.
Okay, good. Well, we've opened the tab. So
I was just going to thank you for opening the tab.
Unlike most minutes, like it really could legitimately have ended with open up, and we would never know. We would never know.
Well, we're starting this minute back in the base. This is where we just have this little bit, and Steve is saying that, I don't know, I'm curious about this. Basically, Bucky said that they had moved all of their parts to another facility that isn't on the map. And my first question is, is this a conversation that Bucky had heard when he was on the operating table in Zola's experiment room about like, hey, let's move all this stuff to a different facility? It could not have been in those last 7 minutes when they were going to blow up the facility, right? I mean, it seems like a weird thing for Bucky to have latched onto. Does that line seem like weird at all? Like, to anybody? Like, we just need to somehow hint that there's another facility out there and we just don't know where it is.
I hadn't thought about it.
I have no response to that.
Yeah, it has never struck me either as weird at all because like there are so many facilities at this point. Like he's saying the line over a map with a lot of facilities on it already.
Well, and I guess that's the thing is it just strikes me weird that of all the people this is coming from, it's Bucky that had heard them about moving parts to another facility. And I'm just like, when did Bucky hear this? Like, how is this something that Bucky heard? Is Zola just kind of sloppily having these sorts of meetings with a prisoner strapped on the table where, if he gets away, he can report it? Like, it just strikes me as weird that and again, this is what happens when you do these movies by minutes is you spend way too much time looking at these little lines. I'm like, wait a minute.
Right.
How did Bucky know this?
Zola never heard loose lips sink ships, Andy. That wasn't there yet. Like, this is how that was defined. You'll learn about it in Boots on the Ground, the untold story of Hydra's loss in Switzerland.
The joke that just won't die.
Oh, I'm so glad it won't die. It's so fun.
You cut off one joke.
But that's very possible that Zola was just having conversations while Bucky was out. And Bucky could have been like absorbing some of that subconsciously or sometimes when he was awake. And Zola just wasn't aware. I mean, he could have been sending stuff out Morse code or something. And Bucky was, understanding what he was sending out.
So when he came back, he went dit 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 da 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 dit da da.
Right.
He's just like reciting it so they could translate.
I know that would have been
weird.
Even better if Cap would have told him that. This is what Bucky said. Da 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 da.
I also was like, what were they moving? Because, I mean, this was a facility that they had been in, and Schmidt so readily just blew it all up because he saw Captain America in the room. He's just like, our troops are outnumbered. Let's just blow it all up. All of this, I don't know. I end up running into these things that really stick with me. It's like, when were they moving stuff to another facility? Like, this facility was full of stuff. There's no way. I mean, we actually saw it blowing up, so it didn't all get moved to other facilities. Or maybe they were just talking about moving the parts that were finished. Like, we're building these parts and shipping them to another facility. I guess that would make more sense, huh?
Yeah. I mean, that's what you do in the like all the machines and the catwalks and everything. They just build it and move it. Build and move.
All right.
Also, you need to stop watching movies 1 minute at a time.
That's all I do now. Every movie I watch, I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch this minute, but I'm going to watch it 50 times. I'll come back tomorrow and watch the next minute. And then presumably, I mean, we're going to be all of these parts of things that are going over to the Valkyrie. That's, essentially what we're, getting. There is this other facility. It's not on the map. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Let's telegraph this because there's something that's going to come into play. I feel like we're getting definitely set up with that. And we have Natalie Dormer here, that she pops in as Colonel Phillips' little assistant here. Any fans of Natalie Dormer and stuff that she's done?
I mean, she looks familiar, but I don't know what else she's in.
If you're a fan of Game of Thrones,
we haven't watched
Yeah, we haven't watched that.
Okay. That's largely. We're not going to do the IMDb game for her this week because she doesn't say anything. We're going to save that actually for next time.
Is Game of Thrones on there? Did I win?
I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say. It just might be, but I'm not going to say. This is Private Lorraine. She really just comes in to deliver with a look. I tell you, the look that she gives to Colonel Phillips. I mean, she's a private. I don't know. How does this read? Like, does it make sense for a private to kind of give him the paper with that sort of look and not say even like, sir or anything? Like she just, I don't know. I don't know how I'm meant to read her throughout this film.
I don't know.
I love it.
She seems kind of like a sloppy soldier. I don't know.
She's a sloppy soldier.
Even if you would call her sloppy. Well, I'm just saying, I mean, you guys will talk about her in future minutes. I don't like her, but mostly because of just her eyeing up Cap all the time. And if I was Peggy would probably already punch her by now. Like, yeah, maybe. I don't know that I should be promoting physical assault, but Peggy should totally
she was
see
pretty
the
quick
eyeing up right there.
She was pretty quick to punch Hodge, so
that's true.
Right.
That's true.
Yes,
I think you're right, Andy. This look is a little much. Just the 10-second look where, like, I don't know what she's trying to communicate. Like, I don't know what is she trying to say? Like, she's definitely acting something. She's definitely opinionated right here, but it feels out of place. It's like she's in the wrong scene.
It's a look that says, here are the papers you told me to get for you that you just told me to get for you 10 minutes ago, and then you stupidly sat down on another desk.
Yeah,
right.
Like, it's that sort of...
That's exactly what it is. Colonel Dumbass.
It's funny that you say that, because the next thing I wanted to say is, he talks about lighting a fire under Schmidt's ass. Do you get any sense that Schmidt might have Germany's ass? Is that something? I just had to go there.
This is like that kind of humor where you just said that thing, and then we'll see you in 9 years where you remind us of the setup to that joke.
Yeah.
And we'll come back.
I know. We've got a time to wait.
Episode 74.
That's what we didn't see on the catwalk when Red Skull mooned them, and Bucky was like, "Do you have one of those?"
Is his ass red? This is like, we were talking about this. Like, is his head red, or his entire body red? We only ever see his head. Everything else is clothed.
I didn't even think about his whole body being red.
Like, if people had known, would they just have called him Red Man or Red Body? But he only shows his head, so we'll just call him Red Skull.
It's just the first thing that they see about him, and that's why it's Red Skull. What if they had accidentally seen him, like, pulling up his pants? He'd be Red Butt all his life, and he would never have made it to the head of Hydra.
So he's definitely not Germany's ass. Woo, the places you end up going. This has
been a great minute, everybody. 9 minutes and we're out.
That's right. All right. So we have this conversation between Phillips and Steve about building a team. This is this moment where, Agent Carter asks Colonel Phillips, "What about us?" Note, she says, "What about us?" And Phillips says, we're going to build a team for you. And Steve says, I'm already putting together my own team. Okay, two things here. First, let's talk about Peggy. Peggy says, "What about us?" And then we're not going to ever see her actually doing any battling. How does it play? Like, how does that play as far as like Peggy's position, as far as like her part of the team?
You mean like, she is now kind of a lapdog?
Yeah, well, what I guess is she? I mean, what about us? It feels like, Team SSR. We're going to go in and do our part, and we're going to be fighting. Is she thinking that she'll be in the field? Is she, like, as an SSR agent, or an agent with the British intelligence who's actually working with the SSR, what should she be? What are we expecting her to be doing? What should she be expecting to be doing as a part of being part of this team? I guess I'm just not sure if just standing there collecting flags is essentially what Peggy's role is. Is that best suited for her as an agent?
Well, this is the transition, though. This is the transition of her as trainer and advocate to guy in the chair, right? She's.
But is she?
Kind of.
Are you telling me the guy in the chair?
Person? That's the flag person. That's what she's doing, right? She didn't have a chair or a computer, so she collects flags for Cap. Tells him where to go next. Isn't that what the guy in the chair does?
I don't feel like there is a camaraderie she's part of the team if she's just there to collect flags. I don't know.
It's not just collecting flags. Is just
she's not saying anything. She's not in a chair. She's not.
Because it's not montage. It's music she's not going. That's coming.
We're so ahead of our point that we're talking about here,
yeah.
But I'm just saying. She says, "What about us?" Hey, we're all going to go do this together. And I'm just saying, it feels like what we should be expecting in the coming minutes is Steve and Agent Carter and the Howling Commandos and, everybody kind of working together to do stuff. And I just feel like
she is now left out.
Peggy Carter may be getting left out. I don't know. Jonathan, Tabitha, do you read anything with that, or am I going way too far down this track of thinking?
I guess we just don't know really what her position is or what the relationship is, because when we first see her, she's in America where they're doing the training. I assume that's all happening in America. All the training stuff at the very beginning. So I would assume while she's in America that, it's either just her or maybe a few British people, but then now they're in England. So now they're meeting up. But is it still just her as far as the representative from non-America, or does she have a group of people, or I don't know.
It is so ill-defined. Who is making up the SSR? All we really knew is that it was Stanley Tucci's project that he was running, and she was the MI6, kind of the British, the Allies representative, and Colonel Phillips was kind of the American representative of it. It seemed to be those three people kind of heading it up. We saw scientists all over the place and military people kind of helping. So it seemed like there was this large thing. Howard Stark is kind of their civilian who's helping with the tech and everything. And so now I guess we don't really know who the head of SSR is anymore. And so maybe she is the head of SSR and she's just speaking to that capacity. How are we? What about us? How will we now help serve? And so maybe that's kind of what she's saying there.
Yeah, I don't know. Because now that they're in London, they're kind of you're in our house now. So what are we doing?
Yeah, but so is the Colonel. They're all in London. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just get the feeling that that she and Steve are, in her view, the dynamic duo of SSR, and us is representative of how are we SSR going to serve this particular mission? It damn well better be different than going out on a publicity tour.
Well, what he specifically says to her is, Agent Carter, coordinate with MI6. I want every Allied eyeball looking for that main Hydra base. And then she says, what about us? So, wouldn't that be included? Yes, that means you too. You're also going to be looking for
that is a weird order. That should have been the other way around. I just told you what to do. And so
it's just that minute, though.
Should you be here at all if you can't listen to and follow directions?
Maybe that's why Lorraine has the annoyed look.
I'm giving you the paper that you already had. She's asking the question that you already answered. Everybody's.
We need to get out of this bunker.
Yeah,
that's right. This bunker of confusion.
It's like a small gas leak, and they're all just going loopy.
That's what it is. So, all right. Now, what about this thing with Steve deciding, two things about Steve. He's deciding he needs a team. Before, he's just I can do this all by myself. I'm going to run in solo and save all these people. Now he's like, oh, I need a team. I have to have a team do this. And then there's the whole perspective of, hey, I'm putting my own team together. I know you're putting together the best men, but I really am going to be able to put it together better than you. Again, we know Steve's opinion and the way that he treats military and who's in command. But how does this play? Does all of this seem does it seem like this is what they're trying to give us as far as like, this is who Steve is? He's this guy who just decides things for himself, or what? Like, how does it play for you?
Well, there's a missing scene, right? The scene that's missing could go one of two ways. It's either, the colonel says, no, all due respect is very kind of you to say, but I'm also a colonel and you are a captain. You can call me Colonel America and I get to decide who the team is. But what it sounds like actually happened is, with all due respect, I'm already, I've already putting my team together, and the colonel says, I actually don't give a crap. Go ahead and put your team together. And that allows us to cut to, because it just seems like something that he really doesn't care about. If he had a strong opinion in the movie, I think they would have shown it to us. So I don't give that much thought.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I guess it's the whole old versus new. He's the super soldier that they were trying to create. Because he can do things differently or better or whatever, nobody understands what to expect out of him. And so it's just we're just changing the paradigm. I'm going to create a team because it's going to be different than what you're used to creating. And that's not getting the job done.
Well, part of me thinks that if Colonel Phillips did create a team, that Gilmore Hodge would probably be on it, because, he says we're putting together the best men. And we saw he kind of thought that Gilmore Hodge was one of the best men back in the boot camp. he's the perfect representation of what we want.
But look at what's interesting about this is that this just happens after our, John Hughes ending, right? Like, we just had Colonel Phillips learning a valuable lesson of the role of Steve Rogers in this man's army. And now we have a sequence where it kind of doesn't matter what Steve says to demonstrate that the colonel has learned a valuable lesson. He's just going to say yes to everything now because change has to happen. And change has to happen to propel Steve into a position of superherodom by the end of the movie, right? We have to have him earn a place on the Valkyrie. And the only way he's going to do that is if, and I say this only metaphorically now, is if the colonel drives the car and gets him there. And so this is an example of the colonel just kind of moving things forward for us. Like he's a utility instrument at this point to make Steve a hero. And we need Steve to be a hero in a hurry. Maybe
that's why I struggle with it, because it feels like we're getting to these beats that feel more and more written throughout the film. Colonel Phillips, he says, we're already putting together the best men. Like, they've already been working on this. And Steve, always disrespectful of military hierarchy, is just like, yeah, so am I. It's just like, and Phillips is just like,
he doesn't say it like that, Andy. He says it very nicely, and you are mocking.
He does say it very nicely because it's Steve.
What would your kids say if you mocked them that way?
That's essentially what he is. That's essentially what he's saying when he says, with all due respect, sir, so am I, which is essentially him saying, yeah, I don't care that you're already putting together the best men. I'm Captain America and I get to do what I want. And
no, he's not saying that. That is not what I hear at all.
So if Colonel Phillips did come back and say, well, nice, but you're going to be using my men, are you saying that Steve would say, all right, then, never mind?
I think he probably would, but they didn't give us that movie. I think Steve is a respectful soldier.
You do? He never follows orders ever.
But he does it kindly.
It would be funny to see it just the scene just naturally progress and be like, oh, okay, who's on your team? And he's like, oh, well, they don't know it yet. Wait,
exactly.
I thought you were putting together your teams. Like, I was thinking about it.
In my head.
Yeah. In my super strategic head.
And Colonel Phillips is like, here's the people I've already been recruiting. They're sitting right here in the room. And Steve's like, yeah, but they're right here. They're up in my noggin. Don't worry. I got them.
One of them's called Dum Dum.
You're going to love him.
I just was imagining, if they're sitting there in the room and then they, pan by again. We're going with a different team. And, Hodge just has, this little tear coming down his eyes, just, getting passed over, again.
Standing behind an empty barber chair, his scissors and comb in hand.
They really missed out on those opportunities
They
with
did.
Gilmore.
Yep. Yep. For sure.
Well, anyway, what we do get is a cut after Steve. This is a very much, very smart filmmaking sort of style storytelling. Joe Johnston proves that he knows how to do this. We cut from Steve's line to the team, and it is, of course, the Howling Commandos. And here we sit with them. First question for the two of you. What do you think of the Howling Commandos? I don't know if either of you had read any of the Howling Commandos comics, but do you like the way that they play in the film here?
I have not read the comics, but I do like how they play in the film. I mean, they just seem like a very skilled ragtag bunch, that's just, well, obviously they're up for anything. They're like, well, that sounds kind of fun, actually. So, and I like them. I think they're all really likable.
I feel like I don't really know them that well, though. Like I recognize, like, Dum Dum Dugan has the look. I recognize. I really didn't read a lot of the comics involving these guys, but being involved in the comics, you always see little bits of other characters and stuff like that. So I recognize them, but I don't know that through this movie, I really, I'm not first in line for the Howling Commandos miniseries or something like that. I mean, sure, I'd watch it, but I don't know, be like, wow, I really want to see what else they were doing.
I would watch it. I'd want to know what else they were doing.
But would you be first in line?
Maybe second.
Okay.
Like I wouldn't be camped out overnight like Black Friday or anything, but I would want to see it for sure.
Would you Black Friday the Howling Commandos? That's amazing. How would the Howling Commandos stand up to A-Team on a Thanksgiving?
As far as like the tone of Marvel series, like that would be totally fun. I would absolutely go for that.
Yeah. Original A-Team. Not that.
Yeah, see, now that's a theme right there, right?
Yeah, it's very true.
That's a theme.
We actually, just totally spinning off that, last night, we went through a whole YouTube thing of watching, like, guess the 80s TV theme songs, guess the 70s TV theme songs. And yeah, it's amazing to see how, like, what era's theme songs were the thing. And then, we just talked about Marvel stuff where it's like, oh, I don't know what that is, Right. It could be 5 different movies. It might not, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to sing a theme song and quiz you right now, but I'm not going to do that. I just want you to know I'm showing enormous restraint right now by saying I think that's a really interesting point about the Howling Commandos and their representation in this movie, that those who read the comics understand what the Howling Commandos represent. And if you haven't ever really followed where the Howling Commandos are, then you don't even know that they're Howling Commandos. Like, they never call them the Howling Commandos. They just really, you see Dum Dum with the mustache, and maybe that's kind of an iconic look.
And the bowler hat.
And the bowler hat. But if you, it really is just, it's effectively a cameo because it's never really told. Even obviously they have a much stronger role in the film, but you're never told that they're supposed to mean something more than just Cap's team.
It's true, because when I was researching them, I was like, James Montgomery Fellsworth, he's Union Jack. Well, who is Union Jack? Like, I didn't know those things because I didn't read the comics. And so I'm less like, well, that seems interesting. I'd like to know more. Maybe I would camp out in line to know more if these guys went on to do these things.
Well, that's like, I know Marvel versus DC, but the Wonder Woman movie, people say that there's a lot of parallels between that and Captain America, the movies. I mean, but I think Wonder Woman actually did a better job of introducing the team and getting to know some of their characteristics and, rooting for the team. Like, I might root for the Howling Commandos in this movie, but I don't know that I could root for any one of them specifically to do their thing, because I don't know what they do or who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not given their own little journey for each character, whatever it is. They have a unique look, and to that end, I think largely they were brought in to be kind of the sidekick surrogates for Steve as he was fighting, just so we could have people we could identify. So it's not just 6 people in military fatigues, but it actually is people who we can go, okay, the guy with the bowler hat and the guy in the beret. And then it's also this all-American, very melting pot sort of group. And so I feel like they just said, this will be a great opportunity to kind of bring these characters in to just kind of create a group that Captain America can run around with, that, you know, they have a feel to them. So it's just not, you know, a bunch of red shirts. And I feel like that's largely what they did here. And they didn't end up giving us anything specific, which is a little bit of a bummer, but it is what it is. Before we get into kind of the scene itself, this pub in the film is called the Whip and Fiddle, and it was filmed in a place called Crocker's Folly, which is still there. You can go swing by Crocker's Folly in London. And so we're coming in post-pitch, and Dum Dum, the funny thing about Dum Dum, when I look at him, I feel like he reminds me of the man who runs the spa in Frozen. Like, that's where I go to with the Dum Dum in this particular scene. He just feels like that. And we're getting some pub songs playing in the background. This first song, I can't actually find what it is that's playing. There is a song credited, interestingly, composed by Joe Johnston himself, along with Joe E. Rand, called Rose of Mayfair. I can't actually find a recording of it anywhere, but I'm guessing that that's what we have here. And then we are going to be getting to another pub song tomorrow and another one next week. We'll talk about those when we do. Just kind of setting the scene for this conversation between Steve and the Howling Commandos. Yeah, I mean, you know, it feels like the, you know, let's build a team scene.
Yeah. Everybody's enthusiastic, but they feign a little bit of like, oh my gosh, it was so hard and we almost died. But yeah, we'll go back. Like, let's move it along quickly and get Cap a team.
That's exactly what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
And Dernier is got some sass. Like, he
does. Do you want to go walk through what Dernier says?
So Dernier, so they're speaking French, and he says, I'm going to fight until every one of these bastards is dead, chained up, or crying like a little baby. And he said, whatever the other guy, what's the other guy's name?
Gabe Jones.
He says, I hope it's all three. And he says, Mortsi is, dead if I have my way, kind of a thing at the end. And so I like that he wants them chained up and crying like a baby. If they're not dead, they better be chained up and crying like a baby. I think that's really fun.
Well, then Jones is like, I hope all three.
I know.
These guys are very dark.
But they're smiling and laughing about it so much. I think that makes it's actually charming.
Yeah.
They're really the serial killers of the group. And they're like, no, we really are going to chain them up.
I know. Wait till you see them. They'll be crying like a baby right before we kill them.
It's probably just their revenge, because they probably saw a lot of that when they were prisoners of war, and slaves and stuff there, of dead, chained, and crying like a baby.
Yeah.
Maybe even them.
Right.
So they want to do it back.
Yeah, I was crying like a baby.
It is a fun little scene, and it is the scene where we see everybody, like, when Fallsworth sounds rather fun, actually. It seems like, very British, kind of that, kind of stalwart, I'm ready to fight, sounds like a hoot, old fellow. It just comes across that way. And then, of course, Marita with his belch, as I'm in. It's fun. I mean, it definitely gives a little hint of the character for each of these guys. But yeah, to the point, it just, they feel like they're a team, but they don't feel like there's a lot of there is individuality, but we never really get to know any of them individually, I guess is maybe the way to describe it.
Well, like, I don't know what they do. Like,
right.
Like Donatello does machines, but what does Dum Dum Dugan do? I don't know.
Donatello does machines. That's a Captain America movie I would like to see. Captain America and the Turtles.
Well, speaking of mixing things, like they couldn't do a mutant, so there's no James Howlett in these Howling Commandos. No Wolverine back in the day.
No Wolverine.
That's right.
We can't do that.
Yeah, it's interesting, those little beats, because we talked about that, or actually we don't. That's next week. I'm confusing my recordings. There will be some interesting conversation about that as it relates to the Shield, for sure. And, lines that get crossed because certain studios have rights to things and don't have rights to other things.
About strongest metals and all that.
We'll just leave it.
There's going to be words.
There.
Words will happen. Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't know if we have anything else. We're going to finish this conversation as far as Steve. Will he or will he not open a tab for these men? We will have to find out next time. Jonathan, Tabitha, remind everybody about your show and how they can find it.
UHF 62nd. I told you yesterday, don't go there, but yeah, I'm telling you today to go there. See all the stuff that's on there. Listen to all the episodes that are there. Imagine all the episodes that we recorded, but we haven't edited yet. Imagine all the episodes we haven't recorded yet. And maybe imagine yourself in those episodes and tell us what you think. And yeah, just listen to that. Again, UHF62nd.com.
A little play on words there, 62nd. Love it. All right. Well, thanks as always, both of you, and Steve. Steve, where am I going? And Pete.
Let's hear it for Captain
Pete.
Steve.
Yeah.
Let's go.
All right. Bucky. See you tomorrow, too, Buck.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Spread the News by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, consider doing that for this show.